Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 Developer Diary. Today we are going to be talking a bit more about diplomacy with relations and infamy, but of course before we do that, we've got this lovely piece of artwork. We've seen it before, but it is pretty appropriate to the topic. It shows the Americans meeting I believe the Japanese. And yeah, it's diplomacy. There's totally nothing sinister going on there whatsoever. Just don't mind the ironclads in the bay there. They're totally peacekeeping vessels. Don't even worry about it. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's have a look at this week's Twitter teaser, courtesy, of course, from Martin Anward. So, Dev Diaries in Diplomacy in Vicky 3 continue tomorrow. So here's your Wednesday teaser with a little look at Austrian diplomacy in the context of a Württemberg player. So Württemberg is, if I can open this right here, that's that country right there. I'm fairly sure, because this one here is Baden. I'm pretty sure this one here is Württemberg. And seeing their diplomacy in Victoria 2 as a sphereling of Austria, it makes sense that they're pretty cozy with Austria, as you can see by the blue colour of Austria. Maybe that is alliance, perhaps, as it is in many other Paradox titles. But we could also just have a look at Austria in general, right? We're looking at them having a reputable amount of infamy, which we'll learn more about today, the cordial relations between them and Württemberg, and a friendly attitude. Lovely. From Württemberg's perspective as well, or sorry, from Austria's perspective, like Austria is not very chummy with Prussia or Serbia or the Ottomans, but they're pretty chill with the Papal States, Bavaria, Württemberg, Baden. It looks like France is also pretty chill relations there as well, and then just generally no relations with any of the other northern Germans. Pretty cool indeed. All right, well, with that, let's have a look at the Dev Diary itself. So, relations and infamy. Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 Dev Diary. This one's going to be a little bit broad, as we want to go through the fundamental mechanics of diplomacy before moving on to more specific topics. Today, the mechanics we're going to be going over are relations, infamy, and interests. So, relations, something we saw in Vicky 2, nothing new there. Infamy is also a mechanic we have in Victoria 2. Interests, though, is something a bit different, so we'll get onto that. So, first off, we have relations. It's a value on a scale between -100 and +100 that determines the overall diplomatic standing between two countries, similar to relations and opinion in games such as EU4 and Stellaris. The key difference between relations here and in those games is that Victoria 3's relations are bilateral, meaning that while in Europa Universalis, the words escape me, France can have a relation of -100 with Prussia, while Prussia has a relations of +100 with France. In Victoria 3, these two countries will always have the same relation score towards one another. That's a fairly interesting change, although it's not really much of a change because that is how it worked in Victoria 2 as well. In Victoria 2, you had two kind of relations. You had are they cordial, friendly, neutral, etc., which was for secondary powers, and only the major powers had that relationship thing going on. Like a major power couldn't be cordial with another major power. And they also had the numbered relations, which you could also spend your diplomatic paper points on, which would increase the rate at which you gained. It's not prestige. It's you're spreading your influence, kind of thing. But yeah, the higher your numbered relations, the faster that would spread. But yeah, it's interesting change. There's a few reasons for this change. Again, it's not really a change, other than with Vicky and Stellaris, so with EU4 and Stellaris. Making it more clear exactly where two countries stand with each other, but most important is that we want relations to be a mechanic with significance and mechanical effects, not just for AI countries, but also for the player, and even in multiplayer. Your relations number will translate into a relations level, and the different relations level are as follows from highest to lowest. We've got warm, amiable, cordial, neutral, poor, cold, and hostile. So, I'm not going to take credit for this, because it wasn't my idea. I didn't originally come up with this as a thing to complain about, but it is something that I do very much agree with. And that is, these are in the wrong order. Or rather, these are the wrong words, right? What is the opposite of cold? I'm not talking about in the game, I'm not talking about in Victoria 3, I'm talking about in real life. The opposite of cold is hot. But you can't really use hot relations because that kind of makes you think of warfare, right? The opposite of a cold war is a hot war. Hot war is guns and bullets and booms and shit, right? So warm. Warm is the opposite to cold, right? Except it's not here, because amiable is the opposite of cold. Hostile is the opposite of warm. These are kind of not really doing it for me. I don't know exactly how I would have it, but I would say hostile still staying at -80 to -100 seems fine. Cold, I think, is probably also fine. Although maybe switching cold with poor is also pretty much okay. Neutral being there is fine, and then it's really the positive relations, right? We could have cordial and amiable switch. We could have warm and amiable switch. They're all very much the same. I would say 80 to 100 should be friendly. The opposite of hostile is friendly. Then I would say the opposite of poor is good. So maybe amiable, and then replace cordial with warm. So it would go friendly, friendly, cordial, warm, neutral, cold, poor, hostile. I think would probably suit better. I'm sure these things can be like this is not a difficult thing to change. Like a mod could change this with like 10 minutes of work. I don't think these are the best ways to describe these numbers, in my opinion. I mean, if you have a different opinion, if you have a different ranking, like what would your 7 relations effects be, right? Let me know in the comment section below. Put seven names to these numbers. Let me know in the comment section below. I would be very much interested in reading those. But anyway, let's go on. Your relationship with the Great Powers will be especially important as they are the ones with a global reach to potentially affect you no matter where your country is located. And again, we have the Great Powers list here, showing Great Britain all the way at the top there. From here, this, I believe, must be France. Hostile relations with Great Britain, cordial with the USA, cordial with the Austrians, and as we saw here, France and the Austrians do seem fairly green with one another. They could potentially be cordial. I could see that being a thing. And then France having cold relations with Prussia, the Ottomans, East India Company, Spain, Netherlands, and Bavaria also seems pretty feasible. As we saw before, this being called neutral is something that still needs to be solved, but I definitely could see this as being France. Anyway, all of these have an impact on the AI's decision-making in terms of which diplomatic proposals it will accept, which side it will want to join in diplomatic plays, and so on. But besides that, there is also limitations on what actions you can take against another country based on your mutual relations. For example, a relations level of cordial or above acts as a non-aggression pact. It's not possible to start most diplomatic plays against a country with which you have that relationship level without first acting to reduce said relations. On the flip side, signing and maintaining a customs union with a country requires you to be at or above cordial relations, and there are other actions that cannot be taken unless relations are at other certain negative or positive thresholds. So again, these are both for cordial, you need to be over 20. You need to be under 20 to do the diplomatic plays, you need to be over 20 to do the customs union. Got it. Yeah, these need changing. yeah, they just do. So, how do you raise and lower relations? The primary way is through the improve relations and damage relations ongoing diplomatic actions. We'll see more about those next week, but there are many other ways in which relations can be increased or decreased, including various events, diplomatic incidents, see the section on infamy below, and the expel diplomats diplomatic action, which we'll also go over in detail next week, which is a way in which one country can act to prevent another from cozying up to them relations-wise, though at the cost of gaining infamy. So, say I am playing, well, let's say France. We're playing France, right? And I want to prevent Prussia from declaring on me or from starting a diplomatic play to gain the Alsace-Lorraine region. So I would increase my relations with Prussia and get ourselves to cordial, which, I don't know, it seems like the numbers have already changed because cordial is +4 here? We've just learned that cordial is 20 to, like, 49. Old screenshot, perhaps. I'm not sure. So I increase my relations with Prussia. If Prussia would want to start that diplomatic play to take, from their perspective, Elsass-Lothringen, then they would need to either do the damage relations, or even if, like, you know, the equilibrium is the same between me improving relations and them damaging relations, they could then also expel my diplomats so that I can't improve relations. I think that's pretty interesting way of doing it. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. You can also then be able to see very well that, oh, diplomacy is falling down and this country has ideas on starting a play against me because they've expelled my diplomats and they're reducing their opinion of me. The fact that you can see when someone's doing that, right? Because, again, we're playing France in this situation, in this screenshot here. And you can see that relations between France and Austria are cordial. Ongoing efforts to damage relations are at 91%. Progress is 1% a day, and will result in mutual relations changed by -1 in 1837. And you can see that damage relations progress from Austria each day. So, unless we're playing as Austria and we're looking at the map from France's perspective, France will be able to see that Austria is doing this. So it is kind of like a, not foreshadowing, but like ringing a bell and saying, oh yeah, we're gonna go and, you know, we don't want to be friends with you anymore. And it's not a case of, like in EU4, it's like, oh, insult, wait a month, insult, wait a month, insult, just to get the relations low enough so that you can attack without a stability penalty. In this, it is a lot more covert. It's subversive, and I think it's very much more interesting as well. I very much like this idea. France finds itself with few friends in Europe. The only great power they have decent relations with is Austria, and it seems like that might not stay that way. Indeed, indeed. So that covers relations. Let's move on to infamy. This is something that did exist indeed in Victoria 2. It's a system we've previously talked about a little under the name of threat, implying that it works similarly to aggressive expansion in E4, but it's actually something we have since redesigned following tester feedback, as the very localized effect of a threat and aggressive expansion did not feel appropriate to the far more globalized Victorian era. The result is something that could be described as a hybrid between older Infamy, or Bad Boy, as those of you who have been around Paradox Grand Strategy games for long enough might recall, systems, and the newer, more localized systems. So, in Victoria 3, a country has an Infamy value that starts at 0 and can increase to literally anything. There is no upper cap on it. As a country's infamy increases, other countries will become more wary, resulting in various diplomatic penalties for the infamous country. If infamy exceeds the Pariah Threshold, which is currently set to 100, it wasn't called this. I'm pretty sure it wasn't called a Pariah Threshold, but in Vicky 2 that was 25. A country becomes a potential target for a special contained threat diplomatic play, where the great powers step in to restore order. Yeah, that is the 25 of Victoria 2. Infamy decays slowly over time, and its rate of decay can be increased if the country has a large amount of unallocated influence capacity, representing that capacity being put to use, trying to salvage the country's global reputation instead. Alright, it's global, which makes me think there's got to be something to localize it as well, because Great Britain shouldn't give a damn about, I don't know, some Dutch miners, or not Dutch miners, some Indonesian miners attacking each other, right? they shouldn't care. Yeah, like Vietnam attacking Cambodia. That shouldn't be something that's on Great Britain's radar, and they shouldn't step in to restore order if that gets to 100. So there must be something to keep it local as well. We can see here Bolivia. After making some aggressive moves against its neighbours, Bolivia's infamy is increased to the point where it will start feeling some diplomatic effects, though it's not yet too bad. So they're infamous. They got 33.02 infamy. What is the problems they're going to get? What are these diplomatic effects? Because it doesn't say in this screenshot, and we haven't... There's nothing in here yet. Various diplomatic penalties from an infamous country. Such as... So far, this should probably sound very familiar to anyone who's played Victoria 2, but the key difference between Victoria 3 and its predecessor here is that a diplomatic incident mechanic is tied to infamy. In the vast majority of cases, any action a country takes, for example demanding land in a diplomatic play or violating a neutral country's sovereignty during war, that increases infamy will also create a diplomatic incident localized at a particular strategic region. Alright, so this is how they keep it local. This is how they keep it in the correct geographic space. For example, starting a diplomatic play to demand a colony in West Africa will result in a diplomatic incident occurring there. Whenever a diplomatic incident happens, the country that caused it immediately suffers a penalty to their relations with all countries that have an interest in the region. This is one of the things that was mentioned at the top, with the amount of relations lost based on the amount of infamy attached to the incident in question. Infamy in itself should be understood as a measure of how concerned the great powers are about a country, and as such, each country rank has an effect on how much infamy a country gets when it commits a diplomatic transgression against another. Generally speaking, the lower the rank of the two countries involved, the less infamy will be generated, as the great powers care a lot more about actions taken by and against other great powers than they do over two minor powers being engaged in a local squabble. I like it. Okay, that's fair enough. So there are basically two ways to stop Great Britain giving a damn about Vietnam attacking Cambodia. Firstly, if they don't have an interest in that region, they won't have the relations lost with Vietnam for that. And also, because Vietnam is not any kind of world power, they're generating far less infamy for it. However, if Vietnam was to attack, say, France or even, yeah, I mean, the only people in the region would be France eventually. Maybe if Vietnam goes across the water to attack the Dutch in Indonesia, then maybe Great Britain will start to give a damn. Because Great Britain has an interest in Indonesia because it owns, I think at the start, it does own bits of Indonesia in Borneo, I think. I might be wrong on that one. Okay. I like it. Alright, so the Sikh Empire's ambitions on India are not going to go unnoticed by countries with an interest there. So yeah, it's a lot of infamy, I would imagine, because East India Company is a vassal of Great Britain, and Great Britain is caring quite a bit about that. Although the relations only reducing by 18 is interesting. It's a ton of infamy, but less so on the relations. Ultimately, what this means is that infamy doesn't just have a global effect. Where you're accruing it matters. If you keep taking actions that destabilize a particular strategic region, you can expect to quickly become very unpopular with both the locals and any outside powers that have taken an interest in it. You've capitalized it again. Alright, so, by now he said interest a whole bunch of times, so it's probably time to finally explain what they are. To do that, though, he has to first explain the concept of strategic regions. We have a map here, I assume, is going to be the strategic regions. It's a large, predetermined geographic area consisting of a number of state regions, with the 715 state regions of the current internal build divided into a total of 49 strategic regions. So we have seen strategic regions before, way back when. It was something that was in the screenshot of South America. There was a little thing saying it was in this X strategic region. So I guess to put another nail in, hopefully, the coffin of the crackpot theory. A large part of that was talking about strategic region. What could it be? And this may be a reason why armies are no longer in the game. But now we know what a strategic region is for. That's like, I don't know, kicking out another leg from the crackpot theory. So anyway, let's have a look at the strategic region map of Europe. As with all parts of the map, this may not be how it looks on release. So let's have a look. Let's see, what do we think of this, right? So I've got England separated from Scotland and Ireland. Okay. It looks like that can't be the same, can it? Can Iceland really be in the same region? Because that says EA. That could be C. Could it be the North Sea region? So we're looking at Greenland, Iceland, Ireland, and Scotland. There's potentially, yes. I'm thinking that might be the case. We've got the Baltic, which is, I mean, this is the Baltic Sea. This is Sea of Finland. This is the Baltic Sea here. I suppose that name makes sense. Another, I mean, I wouldn't call it, Scandinavia is definitely not the correct term, so I wouldn't use that. I suppose Baltic is probably the best you could have there. Also including Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Okay. North Germany, South Germany makes sense. We've got South France, got North France. I'm not sure why those are split, but sure. Rhineland being split off makes a whole lot of sense. Italy being there makes sense. We've got Iberia, including right down the bottom. I don't know if you can see there. We've got also Gibraltar is relatively large, and also a large chunk taken out of the north of Spain, which I assume is the Carlist Rebellion. Poland as a name for this region, I'm not sure I agree with. I'd say maybe Central Europe could be a thing. Danubia also is very awkward as a name. Potentially it could be called something like Carpathia, but I don't know. Danubia is a bit weird. Balkans seem fine, except why is Thrace not in the Balkans? That seems very awkward as well. And I know it's because, the Ottomans own it, and then eventually Turkey will own it, if Turkey ends up being formed. I don't agree with it. I think this should still be in the Balkans. North Russia, South Russia, I don't have an issue with that. Caucasus, I don't have an issue with that. And then we've got other regions over here. I'd say the only big problem I have here, other than the names of these, is Thrace. Specifically Constantinople, Istanbul, whatever you want to call it, not being included in there. Because if you think about it, the Ottomans would then, if they want to have an interest in the Balkans, they would need to declare that they have an interest in the Balkans. If they have Anatolia as literally what Anatolia is, and not including Thrace, then they have an interest here because they're in it, and they would have an interest in the Balkans because they're in it. And I think that would probably be better. I would argue that this is a mistake. I would like to see this change. Let's read on, maybe we'll come back to this. Interest is, put simply, a mechanic that determines whether or not a country has a stake in a particular strategic region and plays into numerous different mechanics such as diplomatic plays, colonization, and the aforementioned diplomatic incidents. A country can gain an interest in a region in one of two ways, either automatically by having a geographic presence there, owning land or controlling subject nations in the region, or by using declared interest. A declared interest is a country quite simply saying that regardless of their lack of geographic presence, a strategic region is still of importance to them, perhaps because they plan to colonize it or they want to prevent a hated rival from expanding into it. A country can then declare an interest in any region that is either adjacent to a region where they already have an interest, or which they can reach through the support of their naval supply network. I love this! having more importance put on the Navy is a great thing. Victoria 2 does it best of all the Paradox Grand Strategy games right now. I'm glad to see Vicky 3 following in the footsteps of making the Navy an actual important mechanical resource, I guess. More so than just, I have Navy, so I win on the water and you can't transport troops, or I have a big fleet of trade ships, so I make more money. That's boring. This, having multiple mechanics tied to the strength of your Navy, is huge. It's awesome. I love it. The number of declared interests that is available to a country depends on their rank. A great power can choose to have its fingers in a great many pies, while an insignificant power is limited to acting only in regions where they already have land. Okay. Looking at Persia here, you might want to declare an interest in Persia for a number of reasons, such as checking Russian or British aggression in the region, or as a precursor to seizing colonies there for yourself. Alright. So, moving on. Interests do not provide any inherent benefit to a country beside the ability to throw their weight around in a strategic region, and can actually be a bit of a double-edged sword in that a country with interests all over the world may get dragged into a lot of local conflicts. Ultimately, interests are our attempt to simulate such historical occurrences as to why certain parts of the world simply got a lot more attention from the great powers than others at particular points during the century that Victoria 3 covers, and to make nations act and care about things in a way that makes sense according to the national self-interest. That's all for today, yeah, more diplomatic stuff next time. Diplomatic actions, looking forward to that one. Alright, before we go into the comments then, I want to have a look at this and try and see if I can explain away that this makes make a case for Anatolia owning Thrace. Obviously, at the start of the game, the Ottomans own land in the Balkans, and as such, they have an interest there inherently, because they have land there. They would also have an interest in Danubia, because they have land there as well. They also have an interest in the Caucasus, and whatever this is, probably Arabia, if I was to guess. Or Syria, it might be called. But they have an interest there as well. What would splitting Constantinople off and putting it into the Balkans mean? At the start of the game, it wouldn't mean much. Actually, yeah, it would, because Russia has, well, during the century, there was multiple times that Russia stated that they wanted to take Constantinople back for Christendom. It was still something they wanted. They wanted Constantinople. So, in doing that, I guess what it's doing there is having that declared desire only affect the Ottomans. Because if Constantinople was in the Balkans region, then Russia saying that it wanted it would also have Austria-Hungary be getting interested, getting involved, because they also have land in the Balkans. It would have Greece getting involved because they have land in the Balkans. It would have Serbia getting involved because they have land in the Balkans. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I would argue a good thing. Because in this kind of scenario that we've got right now, Russia saying, I want to take Constantinople, it's in Anatolia. There is only one country in Anatolia. It is just the Ottomans. It would be a case of only the Ottomans care that Russia wants to take Ottoman territory. And I don't think that's realistic. I think France and the UK would get involved in that. Austria-Hungary may get involved in that. So a case for Constantinople being in Anatolia, that's what I'm trying to do. For it. I have nothing. I can't think of any reason why it should be. I suppose maybe when you're looking at the end of the game, and the Ottomans have predictably blown up, and they are now just, modern Turkish borders, say. Then it could be a case of You know, the Ottomans are saying, okay, we wash our hands of the Balkans. We no longer have an interest there. We no longer have any land there, but we're keeping Thrace, which is kind of what happened. And I guess that in a way, Thrace being in Anatolia kind of simulates the idea that the Ottomans gave up all desires on the rest of the Balkans, maybe? That's kind of all I can think of. Look, I'm reaching for straws here. Overarching feeling is Thrace should be in the Balkan region. But anyway, enough of that. Let us have a look at the comments. So, what is attitude and how does it differ from relations? Relations measures the two countries' official diplomatic stance towards one another. You can actively change this through diplomatic actions, event options, etc. And it affects what actions you can take towards a country, whether AI or human. Attitude, on the other hand, is specifically about the AI and signals broadly how you might expect it to act towards you. It's based on a large number of factors including relations, but only impacts what decisions the AI makes in cases where it has a choice. So if we have a look here, the attitude that Austria has towards Württemberg is friendly. If it was two players, that attitude would probably be, oh, you know, it's up to the player. Player is unpredictable. It'll probably have some flavory text like that. Whereas player-to-player relations would still have a relations, they just wouldn't have an attitude. That makes sense. It's a bit like the attitude in EU4. I imagine it's something similar to that. Does prestige affect how fast infamy burns away, and does great power rank affect infamy gain and passive loss? Power rankings of the countries involved in the incident affect how much infamy you gain. The infamy decay rate is based on excess influence, which I assume, like, say, the more prestigious, the more great powery countries will have more excess influence, perhaps. So they'd be able to burn it off quicker. So more information on infamy when we discuss diplomatic plays. Okay, that's not next week. Diplomatic actions is next week. Wouldn't it make more sense to have warm be where amicable is in the 50 to 79 region, have the 80 to 100 be friendly instead, since cold is used for the 50 to 79 region on the other end of the spectrum? Yeah, labels aren't final, good. Probably will change, good. Because, yeah. And also another reply to Blob Man Eats Me. Attitude is how the AI views another country will be the subject of another dev diary, and we've got here. Alright. Panthera Tigris says, Sigh, there go any dreams of ever liberating India. I think colonial states should generate far less infamy. 62 infamy is what you would probably get for taking London. I can see where they're coming from, actually. Yeah. As always, non-final numbers are non-final. You probably shouldn't draw any conclusions of what is and is not possible from numbers shown at the current stage of development. Fairly diplomatic way of responding to that. Could you elaborate further on this portion, please? How can we violate a neutral nation's sovereignty during war? It seems rather interesting. I imagine it's going to be a case of marching your armies, which are going to be in the game, of course, through a neutral nation's land. You're going to have that you're violating their sovereignty by marching through them, even if you're not actively fighting them, not actively conquering them. Just marching your army through them is what I imagine that is going to be referring to. If it was similar to the old system, but doing bad actions against minors and demanding smaller states gave less infamy, it's fine. I hope it's not the same infamy generation for a state in Russia that has 5 million people to a state that has 400,000. Value should be important. Flat penalty is archaic. Flat penalty is what we had in Vicky 2. Good job that it's going away. And also, finally, when's the next monthly update video? Very soon. Alright, well, I mean, that's all the comments. We're through them already. Yeah. What are my thoughts? I would say I think this is an improvement on Victoria 2. I think that's fairly safe to say. Victoria 2 was very interesting. Excuse me, they were very interesting in this regard. It was a very different system to EU4, and EU4, obviously, it came after it. Maybe it wasn't as clean cut of an upgrade when it came to, you know, aggressive expansion from Infamy. I'm glad to see Infamy stay and aggressive expansion not be the, like, it's like Infamy from Victoria 2 has evolved rather than they're taking aggressive expansion from EU4 and evolving that, which I think is a really good thing. And this looks like a very decent evolution of it. I can't see anything other than the aforementioned names here. These labels need to change. I said that already, and apparently there are other people agreeing with me. The numbers here look weird, but numbers aren't final. And certain different strategic regions are a bit awkward. But other than that, I'm fairly happy. I think this has been a pretty good dev diary. But I'd like to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the Thracian issue, the Constantinople issue. Let me know what you think the labels for relations should be. I do read the comments. I will be making sure to read these ones as well. So do feel free to leave a like as well, maybe. All the YouTuber things. Subscribe if you want to see more Victoria 3 news and updates. As we saw there, the next monthly update video is soon to come out, so I'll be covering that as well. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and toodaloo.